Hey all, this is Reddit Tosker. At the Game Awards, Monster Hunter 6 was finally announced and its title revealed. It will be releasing sometime in 2025 to Monster Hunter Wilds. There isn't really much information on it at all right now, other than what we can glean through the trailer. The only supplementary material we have is that Ryoso said that the game would have new levels of detailed creatures and ecosystems, cementing that as a focus for this game. And you can really tell that that's the case. It really does seem to have a new level of detailed creatures and ecosystems. So let's just get into the video and go over everything that we see. The trailer opens by showing off the new location, and the thing that jumps out to you immediately is that there's a huge amount of small monster density, on a scale that Monster Hunter has never had before. There's at least 30 small monsters on the screen at once. The environment that they're in looks like a desert, and it's heavily obscured by sand in the air. This opening does a fantastic job of setting the tone of the game. In the next shot, you get a clearer look at the armadillo-like small monsters. The two in front are possibly the males, as they have the large spikes on their back, and they look like the leaders of the group. And as the pack moves, you can see that there are birds riding on top of these armadillos. A lot of the birds have their mouth agape, and they're moving their beaks around like they're eating something. It could be that there are small bugs you can't see that they're chomping down on. In the next scene, you see these goat-like small monsters that look a little bit like Kestodons and probably fill a similar role. In the background, you can see an avian, and in the foreground, weaving in between the goats, is an adorable pack of tiny raptor creatures. The next shot shows the environment beginning to change. It's still heavily occluded with sand, and now it shows the beginnings of an approaching storm. Next, you see your first look at the hunter and his mount. And there's a couple of things to take note on here. On the mount's side are pouches and a satchel, and on his other side is what appears to be a light bowgun. On its back is what appears to be a bedroll or a tent, and together this could have some interesting implications. The bowgun, for example, is interesting. There's a few possibilities. Number one, there's a possibility that you can go out into hunts with two weapons at a time, and you can switch between them by accessing your mount. Another possibility is that the bowgun can simply be cosmetic, and it represents that you can go to the mount and change your weapon for any other weapon at any time. It's also possible, with the pouches, the satchel, and the tent, that the bird could work as a camp. It could mean that having access to your mount gives you access to all of your items and weapons. Or it could mean that these environments are so large that they're either an open world or close to an open world, or simply just very large. And the mount gives you access to putting a camp either in set locations or anywhere in the world that's clear. It's not 100% obvious to me whether this is an open world or not, or if it's simply an incredibly large biome, with an emphasis on open spaces. That's one of the main things I'm interested in. Ryoso said in the Game Awards that they will have more information summer 2024, and hopefully when they do release that information, it'll be clearer to us whether it is an open world or a semi-open world or just simply extremely large environments. Now in between these shots, you see why the hunter and his mount were running. Chasing him are a pack of what look like Gosshorogs. They're not Gosshorogs because you can see that they have sizable tails behind them. And looking at their faces up close, you can see that they just have an enormous jaw. Next, the hunter rushes into a pack of these armadillos, and there's just an incredible amount of them. The pack of monsters that was chasing you becomes distracted by these armadillos, and they even have an animation for picking them up with their mouth and throwing them, which allows the hunter to get farther away from them. Now behind the Gosshorogs, you can see the sandstorm coming, and it ends up engulfing everything. The environment changes. This sandstorm also doubles as a thunderstorm, and it becomes clear that those spikes that you've been seeing everywhere are actually lightning rods. The next shot shows the hunter and the mount, and it looks like everything has been covered in a blanket of sand. The hunter's clothing, the mount, the armadillos, and the bears are all covered in sand. I suspect that this is going to have gameplay implications. This is going to be like a status effect that will affect you when you're in this storm. And there will probably be armor pieces that have skills on them that will lessen its effects. Now interestingly, the mount is now running with all four of its appendages, whereas before it was running like a chocobo with only its legs. The Gosrog type monsters are still there, distracted by the armadillos. And they bring up an interesting question. What are they exactly? Because they don't appear like they're the type of thing that will go down in a couple hits. What I mean is, they don't look like they're a small monster. In Monster Hunter, the small monsters are usually just nuisances. They're not part of the main monster roster and they go down in a few seconds. But these are very large. They're about as large as a Gosrog. They're very aggressive, and they look like they could be a monster that we hunt, an actual proper monster in the roster. But I don't think that's the case because they're hunting in a pack. That's very unusual behavior if this was a normal large monster. So what I think they are is that they're adding a category of animal that we haven't had before. I don't think that these are large monsters that are going to be part of the roster, but the fact that the hunter is running from them implies that they're a threat. So it's possible they represent this new category of actually dangerous in-between monsters. And they're probably not going to be the only kind that we see in the game. And if that's the case, I think that's wonderful. It's a great idea. Anyway, next you see the armadillo get its spike hit by a lightning bolt, making it clear what it's for. The spikes are an adaptation that allowed it to survive these periodic lightning storms. It's actually a really cool idea because those spikes that are a lightning rod protect both itself and its pack. It's wonderful because it really highlights the Monster Hunter essence. They're not just monsters, they're animals that adapted to their natural environment. Next you see the hunter running away from the armadillo pack and the Gosrogs. And the lightning is hitting around him, showing how dangerous it can be when you're not near a lightning rod of some kind. He then jumps on some rock formations to get away from the area entirely, and here you can see that there are scout flies. They're not as intrusive as they were in Monster Hunter World, so they're hard to notice, but it looks like it's showing him where he can jump to. Then you see the mount falling from a large height, and during this fall you can get a really close look at the hunter. On his left wrist is what looks like a slinger, and on his waist is a lamp that looks like it could be for scout flies. You continue to drop down, and then the bird spreads its wings, allowing it to glide. And before he reaches the ground, the storm passes, and then a heavy wind blows through the area, revealing that this is in fact not a desert, it's more like a savanna. And the area is just often covered in sand because of the storms that go through here. Then you see this gorgeous shot of the savanna-like area, and again it's putting a big emphasis on how many small monsters are on the screen at a time. And it also has a focus on how open everything is. All of these shots have had a big emphasis on how wide and spacious these environments are, lending weight to the idea that this could be an open world. And finally the hunter and his mount look over the environment. To me this is a really incredible trailer, and it's perfect. Like, this is exactly what I wanted for the next Monster Hunter. I believe that this setting is in the new world. This is a sequel to Monster Hunter World in some way. Specifically, it's a sequel thematically. It doesn't necessarily have to have the same people in it, but it's a sequel in that Monster Hunter World had you arriving into the new world. And this game, I think, is going to have you exploring it. It's called Monster Hunter Wild because you're going to be going into the wilds, into completely wild and unexplored territory. I am extremely excited, and more than a little disappointed that we're going to have to wait until 2025. That's well over a year from now, and it could possibly be two. It could happen sometime in September, December of 2025, which is just a staggering amount of time to wait for this game. Anyway, that's the end of this video. As always, thank you very much for watching.